Downward mobility was already far easier and more likely than upward mobility before the 2007 recession. Catherine Newman has focused on the study of this phenomenon, published many studies and books, and her most well-known book titled Falling Out of Grace. Downward mobility has skyrocketed since the 2007 recession, along with the shrinking of the middle class. The most common causes of downward mobility are losing your job first. Note that in many states a person can get laid off and even fired for no reason. See so-called right-to-work states. The other most common causes of downward mobility are unexpected health expenses, divorces, and deaths. The greatest effect of this prevalent downward mobility in the U.S. has been the shrinking of the middle class, largely due to machines and moving jobs overseas and the weakening of labor movements. Many middle-class jobs no longer exist because of manufacturing jobs which have been moved overseas or replaced by machines, the weakening of labor unions resulting in lower middle class wages and benefits being replaced with working class wages and benefits, and places like community colleges hiring pools of adjunct instructors with much lower wages and benefits instead of full-time instructors. Also, the crash of the economy has contributed to the prevalent downward mobility trend in the United States. Many older people lost their nest eggs. Many companies went bankrupt, resulting in lost jobs and the reneging of promised employment retirement funds. And many people had to foreclose on their homes. In conclusion, the probability of downward mobility in the United States is exponentially higher than the probability of upward mobility. Michael Krauss has focused his research on how social class reflects more than just the material conditions of our lives. It affects our aesthetic and intellectual preferences, such as how we eat and how we dress, how we spend, how we play, how we save money, etc. The term for all of this is taste culture. So Michael Krauss studies how social class affects consumers' taste cultures. We're going to explore some of these effects of social class on taste cultures. And you don't need to worry about which one are Krauss's or not. Just know that Michael Krauss is the leader in this kind of research on how social class affects taste cultures. Which two classes of the five-class system do you think do the most fine dining? You probably guessed upper and upper middle. In other words, the blue bloods, the nouveau riche, and the professionals. A fine dining restaurant example in Tempe, where Arizona State University is located, is called House of Tricks. Can you think of a fine dining establishment in your hometown? The lower middle class, in other words, the semi-professionals, prefer table service restaurants, but are more price conscious. So popular casual dining restaurants in this class include Red Lobster, Olive Garden, Chili's, Outback, and TGI Fridays. The lower classes, the working poor, and rock bottom, are hit the hardest on health. Table service restaurants are viewed as indulgent. Thus, any eating out tends to be takeout, like pizza, burgers, fried chicken, which also tends to be the least healthy. Speaking of health, Stunkard has focused his studies on social class and health, and found that obesity is most prominent in the working class and the working poor. All-you-can-eat buffets encourage unhealthy overeating, right? and attract mostly lower classes because most of their spending at restaurants is on takeout, and they feel they cannot go out to eat at a sit-down restaurant unless they really get their money's worth. Read all-you-can-eat buffets. The lower classes also cannot afford to have food go to waste, so they tend to buy less produce. They also tend to use carbs such as rice, bread, and potatoes to stretch meals out. In other words, it generally takes at least a middle class income to afford to be health conscious. Obesity is most prominent in the working class and one part of the lowest class, the working poor. Why not the other part of the lowest class, the rock bottom? Low income and poverty promote obesity, but as you might have guessed, extreme poverty promotes malnutrition.